The chairman for the National Democratic Congress, Asiedu Nketiah, aka General Mosquito, and rather the updates be a buy say wakopiemu ewo Russia sebe address bia wakomo mani ade amanfo chemu say from the way Asiedu Nketiah kasa no omuhunu say as a bid for the presidency no eho adwuma na wo ye ne nkakra eni ade now many workers say Global Info Analytics one of the organizations bano election polls ni ade wo mudimu akotene pa na usually no wo mo polls wo mo ye no utimi say kapa because from series of polls elections basically about the NDC possible next candidate for the NDC. No, you so more your polls on and on and on and on. Now this junior tremu ya polls about the NDC, the next flag bearership race in Wunipo Betimi Rini and take up from President John Dramani Mahama no and one update and now it looks like Asiedu Nketiah is in a comfortable lead. Not really comfortable, but he's in the lead. In social screens, so say Asiedu Nketiah drops from 29% to 27%. Atoforsen moves from 19% to 22%. Haruna Idrisu and Professor Jenana both drop as well in NDC's flag bearership poll, Global Info Analytics. And to say the uno screens national previously, now Asiedu Nketiah was leading with 29%, but Junior Chemu not to say we're declining by 2% to 27%. And Atoforsen has gained from 19 to 22%. But Haruna Idrisu and the vice president, Mame Professor Jane Nana Opoku Ajiman, Womono Oma tese omunso omo de ne so ayeden ate. Now you realize that from what we are seeing, clearly not just say Asiedu Nketiah though say the previous percentage are dropping, he's still in the lead. And ebinum just say that means that with a little effort again, Asiedu Nketiah could push back to maybe one or even more. Now, the reason why Asiedu Nketiah is declining, we are going to put this graph on the screens for you, and then you would see why declining by 2%. And we share the analysis and the graph. Global Info Analytics, Eddie Abana, it shows that he is declining because of popularity. But then, though they know first Asiedu Nketiah was really doing a lot of groundwork any idea, and from the groundwork now you could sense that he was making himself known. But and some are saying that it could even be as a result of the release NDC for the buyer say everybody should halt anything it's gearing towards campaigning for yourself, and let's build and then push and then fulfill our promises to Ghanaians. So on your screens a graph from Global Info Analytics or see who leads NDC in 2028. Enti Osha Asiedu Nketiah will no top with a year 27%, and followed by a year Kisley Atoforsen or also follow with 22%. Haruna Idrisu is 6%. The vice president Jenana Opoku Ajiman 7%. Julius Deborah, the chief of staff, is 5%. And the next person so is leading by 1%. That's Joshua Alabi by 1%. And the next person also 1%. And those who have not really decided in a dorsum, that is 30%. And then the others and so 1%. So you realize that Asiedu Nketiah is ahead of this poll. It just say if all things being equal, if this poll per Global Info Analytics, they and no changes Asiedu Nketiah is likely to take up in the primaries as the next flag bearer for the NDC, and hopefully to mount as Ghana's next president from President John Dramani Mahama. Now, this is a comparison from April 2026 to July 2026. So far, per Global Info Analytics, womo polls a womo ayiye no. Na chese Asiedu Nketiah in April was leading with 29%, like I said, and in July, no, he's leading with 27% with a decline of 2%. Atuforsen is followed with a year 22% now, but then no, 19%, meaning Atuforsen has gained by 3%. Haruna Idrisu, no, so 11% in April. But right now, from what we are seeing on the graph, as at July, no, Haruna Idrisu, need the NSWAT about 6%, and it is a decline of 5%. The same thing applies to Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman, a decline of 1% from 8% to 7%. Julius Deborah too has declined from 8% to 5%, which is a decline of 3%. And Joshua Alabi was that's zero. So saying Wetimi decline, Wetimi increasing by 1%. Eric Opoku has also increased by 1%, and the others are still the same. Undecided, no swa shoot to a from 24% to 30%, as we are seeing on the screens. So, though people have it say, in Shishaya for na NDC de buy no say obia in focusing to support the common goal, that's to make Ghana proud of the NDC by fulfilling their promises to Ghanaians, until they should halt anything and I said this decline and all that reduction and all that. But as time goes on, no, and who things from a different perspective. But in view of that, Asiedu Nketiah is still leading in the polls, though there is a decline. He's still leading. Now, there is the regions that vote, will be our favorite. But it looks like across all the regions, Asiedu Nketiah is still up in the game. And you share the swing regions like Greater Accra region, like Central region. These are some of the swing regions. In history, these particular regions do not have a particular party they align with. They swing. Omokoba. Today they can be in for the MPP, tomorrow they can be in for the NDC. And in the swing regions, Asiedu Nketiah has declined, but he's still leading. But then Atuforsen is now sweeping most of the percentage in most of the regions. And Osha, the NDC, the swing regions are in the race now. Atuforsen here is gaining. In April, Atuforsen had like 28%. And now, he's having 29%. That's an increase of 1%. But in April, Asiedu Nketiah had 24%. In July, Eswati. So you realize that Atuforsen is gaining in the regions. When we take the regions one after the other, he's gaining. Julius Deborah, for instance, has declined by 4%. It was 9%, but they say what that 5%. And Haruna Idrisu, the same to him too. So you realize that I said the only person that is gaining more. That shows how come generally, Atuforsen has gained rather than has gained from 19 to 22. That is because some of the regions now he's gaining from there. Now when we move from the swing region to the Akan regions, as you can see on the screens, Akan regions, we are talking about Eastern region, we are talking about Bronga Hafo, we are talking about Bono region, Ahafo region, we are talking about Ashanti region. These are the Akan regions. Yeshemwa, here to Atuforsen, he did well. He has increased by 4%. That is initially 21% in April. But in July right now, per Global Info Analytics, Atuforsen issued by 4% to 25%. Asiedu Nketiah had 31%, but he said Eswati to 24%. So that is explaining the reduction of Asiedu Nketiah from 29% to 27%. Generally, and you realize that Haruna Idrisu has declined here too. Julius Deborah has also declined. That's the only person who keeps gaining is individually, Atuforsen, and then others and undecided. Now, from the Akan regions, and we move to Volta and Oti regions. Which screens this one? Atuforsen here gained very massively with 11%. 11% from 12% to 23%. 12% in April and 23% in July. Osha Asiedu Nketiah, there is a decline from 30% to 24%. That is 6% decline from the previous. Professor Jenan Opoku-Agyeman has also declined by 3% from 12 to 9. Haruna Idrisu has also declined. Julius Deborah has also declined. So it looks like Atuforsen in the regions, the odds are really working for him. And no, NMA generally, we realize that Atuforsen again from 19% to 22%. Now, from the Volta region, let's go to the northern region, where we thought that Haruna Idrisu, the jurisdiction. So, I mean, he's leading though, but then he's near man shada anko amanibium, anko yi amanibium. So now, a swatting. And said the swatting, the person that has gained from the northern regions right now, Johnson Asiedu Nketiah. So you could realize that in the northern region, previously April 2026, Johnson Asiedu Nketiah over 26%, and Haruna Idrisu was leading in the northern regions. But now, Johnson Asiedu Nketiah is leading by 31%. That is an increase of 5%. Atuforsen has also increased by 4% from 8% to 12%. But Haruna Idrisu was not fortunate. And to Anone the reduction is massive, a whole 16%. That is very sad. So realize that how things are going, the odds are clearly favoring Johnson Asiedu Nketiah at this point in time. And it looks like, Niyama koso sama ne dia, that's fine. But if not, then probably Atuforsen can override Johnson Asiedu Nketiah. So if things go like this and he keeps leading betimi akwa say at some point, Asiedu Nketiah can be the next flag bearer for the New Patriotic Party. Lastly, generally in Ghana, we have NDC delegates, we have NDC voters, we have NPP voters, we have floating voters, and other parties when it comes to the election. Now, Asiedu Nketiah, the NDC delegates, about 27% are willing to vote for him. NPP for our NPP voters that support NPP, about 11% are willing to vote for Asiedu Nketiah. And the NDC voters as a whole, not the delegates, about 24% are willing to vote. And then floating voters, about 15% for Asiedu Nketiah. So that shows comparing that to Atuforsen, you realize that when it comes to the NDC delegates, 27% for Johnson and 22% for Atuforsen. When it comes to NPP voters, Atuforsen leads by 25%, and then Johnson Asiedu Nketiah follows with 11%. When it comes to the NDC voters as a whole, then 28% want Atuforsen, and 24% are in favor of Asiedu Nketiah. When it comes to the floating voters, now 33% are in support for Atuforsen, and 15% for Asiedu Nketiah. The other parties as well are in support for Atuforsen. That means that Johnson Asiedu Nketiah, though right now they said the odds are favoring him, and likely he can take up from President John Dramani Mahama. Still, we could say Atuforsen etimiko nenim kakra bia, then the probability that Asiedu Nketiah could be overridden by Atuforsen very high. And as for Julius Deborah there, who compare Julius Deborah and the vice president, you realize that the vice president Nikra has more ground than Julius Deborah. Though people were saying na party ni munu nkofo pushi agenda edema Julius Deborah and all no. Per the analysis if global info analytics so for now as of July 2026 Johnson Asiedu Nketiah is leading the polls, and if he should continue like that, he's more likely to take over from President John Dramani Mahama. So we are just hoping, say, Bibia betimi akoye the amani. Other than that, time changes and things can change. For all you know, ebikra na Atuforsen said the war ban with much speed. We babe to Johnson Asiedu Nketiah. Now, every NDC